Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Stebbing. This is the last in our video where we're celebrating the release of Nocturne, my first fabric collection with QT Fabrics. Today we're going to be showing you how to make Garden Plot, which is a pattern that was originally released as part of our Stash with Stephanie Club, and now it's available in Fat Quarter Workshop. This is the only place where you can get it. You can get a signed copy from us, or you can grab it on Amazon, but you know, signed copies are always fun. So if you're going to get a kit, you have to purchase this separately because a lot of folks have already ordered the book, so we have split that up. So the cost of the pattern is separate from that. We do have kits available now. Nocturne is here. It is selling right now. What we're doing to make sure that everybody gets what they need and we're able to get it to you is we're taking orders for the kits. So we're going to fill whatever we can from QT Fabrics Warehouse. We're going to put in our order with them, and if you are able to get it in early, then we'll be able to get you that kit in April. If this goes bananas and we go through everything that's in their warehouse, then it's going to have to wait a little bit until the reorder comes in July. But we will get to your fabric, so make sure you go order over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Today though, I'm going to show you how to alter it a little bit because we already have a tutorial out there, but it's for strip piecing. So you're going to take a bunch of fat quarters, you're going to strip piece them together and get this really cool setting when everything's said and done. But we can't do that when you have the owls because we want to make sure that those owls are lined up just so in the blocks the owls are going to be in. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. We've already done one video on fussy cutting, so make sure you check that out if you're doing any of the quilts that have the owls fussy cut in squares like this one. But I'm going to show you how to do it to get everything ready for Nocturne and to use it in our Garden Plot version of this kit. This is also one of my favorites. We will not have the finished quilt top for it. We didn't have enough background fabric in our initial shipment of strike-offs earlier this year, so we're just now being able to make this. We've spent so much time getting orders cut and out to you that there's been no extra time for sewing. So we are going to make the sample up of this, but we won't have it to show you in today's video. We just have the digital image. But I'm going to show you how to cut here because that's the biggest thing, is to know how to cut it. So we're going to strip piece in a little bit, but for this one we've got to cut the owls out first and then we can add them to the strip piece units. Now we've got to get it to 4.5 inches wide. That's the length or the width you're going to cut your strip piece unit down to. So to do that, I just put some post-its at 4.5 inches on my ruler. You could use painter's tape too, but it's always really easy to see where the end is. It's not always so easy to visualize here. So a nice line of painter's tape or some post-its like this that you can easily reposition, those are great. Now when you're looking at this, you got to keep in mind 1/4 inch on either side of it is going to go into the seam allowance. So you got your 1/4 inch here, and then we also have a 1/4 inch here. So I want to make sure that I am going above and below that owl, and that is possible. Now if you've come from garment sewing and you've worked with woven fabrics, there's a warp and weft and it stays pretty straight. Like you can cut and you can rip it across and the pattern will stay straight if you're working with a plaid or something that's been woven. Printed fabric is different because they print the design on it and it's not always straight and even to the edge of the fabric, and then also it can get off when it is doubled and put on the bolt. So when you get a yard of fabric like this one here, we've cut when we sent it off to you guys, we made sure to cut straight down the center of that so you got all the owls that you needed. But if you're just cutting it off the bolt, you can see it's getting, this was like the beginning of a bolt, it's very, very crooked, and that's normal. Nobody did anything wrong. It's just what happens when you print a design that is squarish in nature on fabric, and that's just how it is. So what we want to do is we want to be able to cut straight, so no matter which way anything is going, it's going to look nice and straight on your quilt. All right, so again, I'm trying to get my 1/4 inch so that it is above the ears of the owls all the way down here. And we're doing pretty good there. And I'm going to make sure here, let's see, my 1/4 inch here is right about at the bottom of the feathers. So I'm going to go ahead and scooch it down just a smidge. That way I can get the bottom of the feathers and the tops of the ears when I sew this together. Now, if you're ever not happy, you can kind of pull and tug a little on the fabric here, but I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. And of course I've done it totally backwards because I need to be able to cut on the right hand side. So I'm going to flip that around and we're going to line this up again. All right, so again, I'm looking for that 1/4 inch to be hitting just where the tips of those ears are, and that's turned out pretty good. And then I've got a 1/4 inch here on the end of the ruler that's just below where my feet are, so that's pretty good. This one I've got a little bit of wiggle room, so I can give that a little bit of a tug if I want. All right, so now that I'm pretty happy with how that's looking, I know that when I cut this down to size in a minute, I'm going to be able to see the whole owl, which is really important. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself squared up here. Now, we gave you a full length of fabric in this, so that way you can get all the owls you need for your quilt. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to continue going down, again lining that up so that my 1/4 inch is just at the tip of the ear and at the bottom of the feathers, so that I've got nice straight owls all the way down. All right, so we've got our cut edge totally complete here. So now I can just cut to 4.5 inches like normal, because we've already lined everything up really well, so we don't have to worry about doing it a second time. Now we can just cut to the length we need, or width in this case. Now before we move on, I feel like it's important to note that I only cut one width at a time. As you can see, I've got my entire width of fabric opened up, and I was cutting that one at a time because since it's not usually doubled straight, if I cut and it's in place on one half, but I'm doing both the front and back of the fabric at the same time, it's probably not going to be in place on the back. So make sure that you're opening it up and cutting only one section of fabric at a time. All right, so here's where using Post-its can really come in handy. I'm going to take these off and set them to the side, because what I want to do next is cut this down to 12.5 inches, so that way I can fit that in my really long rectangle. So I'm going to reposition my Post-it at 12.5, and I'm just going to do one of them this time because I think that's probably all I'm going to need. Get that where I want to be. So now I know that I'm going from the edge of my ruler to where my Post-it is, and that gives me a nice visual so I can easily center that owl. All right, so if I can, I kind of want to center these owls as best I can. So if I have this centered where I've got my 6 1/4 is going straight down in the middle of that trellis, then my owls are going to be right where they need to be, and I'm not cutting too much off of that selvage, so this is actually a really good place for it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and then also just make sure that I'm lined up with my 1 inch or 1/2 inch in this case with the top, and that way I know I'm going to have a nice piece that is going to be exactly the width it needs to be. So we're going to go ahead and get that little slice, and then we're going to come around and we're going to trim it to size here, again lining that up with 12.5, and then making sure my inch line is even, so I've got everything nice and square. And now we've got a really nice piece. Those owls are perfectly centered. I've got it's coming off at about the same part here, and we're not going to lose too much when we sew it together. We should just see those little owls, and we'll be able to get the tips of their feathers and the tips of their ears. It's going to look fabulous. Now I've got to do a 4.5 inch one as well, and those are the two sizes you're going to need of the owls. I'm going to go ahead and move this back down to 4.5 again. That way I can center everything. I want to get, let's see, 4.5, so 2 1/4 should be going straight down the center of that owl, going right down his nose and his center feathers. That's looking pretty good. We're almost there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give that a cut. All right, so that's a pretty easy hack to get some really fabulously fussy cut pieces. Just need a couple Post-its or painter's tape and to mark it off so you can easily see and get everything nice and centered. All right, so now we're gonna get into strip piecing, and then we will add this part at the end. All right, so now it's time to strip piece this quilt. So what I've done is I've gotten my background strips laid out in between, and I'm making sure that all my feathers are pointing in the same direction. Eventually, the way this is cut is your long strips are also going to be pointing in the same direction. It's going to look really cool. It's going to be one continuous strip on all of your horizontal sashings. It looks really, really cool when it's all together. But what we need to do is we just need to strip piece this. So I'm going to strip piece my little tiny strip here to my main piece, little to my main, little to my main. And the one thing that's different is we would be also strip piecing this to another fat quarter, but since we're fussy cutting those owls, I'm going to actually sew this to the other piece, so I'll have two on either side, so I can get one big long strip piece to make this as efficient as possible. So now I just get some nice long seams that are super easy. Now, whenever I strip piece, I never pin. All I do is I just line up my edges and I put a finger down at the edge of my sewing machine throat, and then I just let the feed dogs pull it up, and then I repeat and just continue on down the seam. When you get to the end, just sew right on off of that strip and then grab your next set and chain piece that through to save even more time and thread. All right, so I just finished strip piecing to one side of the one that I need to sew on both sides. So I'm just gonna go ahead and clip those threads, and I'm gonna sew down the other side as well. That way I can press everything all at once and save some time. I'm just gonna grab my last piece here. And we're gonna line it up and sew down the other side. All right, so now it's time to press, and I'm gonna press my seams open on this. I really love the way press seams, when they're pressed open, work. You're able to really do amazing things when you quilt because you don't have all that extra bulk, and you don't lose just the teeniest little bit when the fabric folds over, which means you are going to have a lot more accuracy with your piecing. Now, if you're one of those who are like, but you can't stitch in the ditch, what you do is you stitch next to the ditch, and it works just fine. I've got more than 70 quilts behind me that I've pressed this way, and I've never had a problem with seams popping open or threads breaking or anything like that. What you want to do when you do this is you just want to put the nose of your iron straight down the center, and then I put a few fingers ahead of it on the seam to help press it open as I go, and it just heads straight down the seam like this. When you're doing straight seams like this for strip piecing, I find it also really helps keep them nice and straight, because sometimes when you're pressing it over, you're doing this with the iron and it tends to want to weave up on you, and then you don't have straight strips anymore. And since this whole thing is almost entirely strip piece, that can be a challenge. What you do want to make sure is that you have a nice straight line, because if you get a wiggle on the other side, that means there's a pleat on the right side, and it's not going to work out quite right for you. All right, so I just hit it from the main side too, so this one's ready to go. I'm going to press the others open as well. All right, so I've got everything laid back out, and I had to do a little flipping around to make sure all of my feathers are going in the same direction. We want them all, in my case, I've got them pointing to the right, but if you point them to the left, they all have to be pointing to the left for the entire quilt, or it's going to look a little weird and you won't quite know why, but it's because your feathers are going in opposite directions. All right, so now I get to sew these together. I'm going to sew my blue to my green and my black to the green as well, so that I've got one entire strip set. Now, if you're doing one that doesn't have an owl in it, you can go ahead and just sew your piece here instead of sewing it to this one here. You're going to sew it to your big piece on the side, and then you can strip piece the whole thing and just follow the pattern instructions as indicated. But if you're fussy cutting, this is the little workaround for that, the little hack, so you can get it and have those owls exactly where you want. So I'm going to finish sewing these guys together, and then we're going to strip, or we're going to cut this apart and add our owl. All right, so now we're going to cut across this to create the strip piece unit. It's going to be the same width as the other one, 4.5. For all the other cutting instructions and assembly instructions, make sure you get a copy of the book, Fat Quarter Workshop. It's available. You can get a signed copy from me, or you can grab it on Amazon. But if you get it from us, go to shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. It's $14.99, and it's got 12 patterns in it. So that's definitely a good deal. Normally patterns are $12 for a single one, and you get 12 for $14.99, and I'll sign it for you. So go grab that. All right, so what I'm doing here is I am lining up, in this case, my 4.5 inch mark as close to that selvage as I can get, because I want to use as much of this fabric as I can just in case I make any mistakes, and we're good to go there. Now I'm also going to line up an inch line with one of these seams so I know that I'm also nice and square. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and give a cut. Now for this first cut only, we've got to square up this edge because obviously this is kind of a hot mess. We can't put that in a quilt. So all you're going to do is you're going to flip it around, and now we're going to measure and get our 4.5 exactly on the edge that we just cut and cut straight across. All right, so we got this little guy out of the way, put him in the trash, and now we have a lovely little strip piece unit. I'm gonna go ahead and work my way across the rest of the fat quarter, and I'm gonna be able to get 4 halves of rows from just this one unit. So if you were doing this and you were strip piecing the entire thing, you'd be done at this point because you'd have your large rectangle already over here. But since we wanted to fussy cut it and have the owl show up, so this is the way it's supposed to go, then we have to sew that on separate. So we've got our entire strip piece unit sewn together all as one, but we have fussy cut this individually so that way those owls can be peeking out at you and be perfectly centered from when we cut them out earlier in the video. So now all I have to do is I have to put these right sides together, sew them and press them, and my row's done. Now I don't pin this, we're just going a little distance. So I just line up my corners and just sew straight down. When you get to the end, this is a great tip. All you want to do is move your hand to the side of your presser foot and slide down. That way you can keep a nice straight edge going all the way down. All right, we're going to give that a press open as well. Make sure whenever you've got seams right next to each other that you're angling that iron away so you don't accidentally press that going the wrong way. Then hit it from the other side, and then we're all done. So here we have it. We have our entire row together. Most of it was strip piece, a little bit of fussy cutting. I know that sometimes when we think of fussy cutting and quilting, it's super intimidating because we think it's going to take a really long time to do. But if you just do it in little bits like this, it really doesn't add a lot of extra time. We can still do a lot of the time-saving measures with the strip piecing, and then we get a really fabulous result at the end because you can really tell that we took the time to cut that out, and then we're going to have those 2 little owls perfectly centered poking out at us, and in another area we're going to have a smaller little owl, so it's just going to be little hooting at us here and there, and it looks really great. But if you take the time for that, and you take the time to do details like making sure that all your fabrics, your feathers are pointing in the same direction, both here and then also in the skinny strips that are going to be going on when you're attaching your rows, then you are going to have fabulous results, and you're going to love the way this looks. Again, we are not going to have a finished quilt image to show you. We're just going to show you the digital mock-up using the fabric so you can see what it's going to look like. I love this quilt. I can't wait to see it done, but we have been super busy getting you guys all your fabric. I think we are almost all shipped of Nocturne at this point. We probably will be by the time this video comes out, unless you've requested that it ship with your Stashing with Stephanie subscription club, and then it'll go out a little bit later this month. So we have gotten a tremendous amount of fabric out. Nocturne is now available to order. So we have yardage available right now. We can ship that to you. There's also some remnants left. Now, if you want a kit, we're going to order to fill on those. QT Fabrics has a bunch of this in their warehouse. Plus, they're doing a reorder that's going to be coming in July. So if you order early and we're able to fill from what's in QT Fabrics warehouse, then we should get it to you in April. If you're one of the later ones and this goes bananas, you might have to wait until July to get it, but we will get you your fabric. So if this is a quilt that you love and you need it in your house, check it out and you can have a lot of fun with it. And I just can't wait to see this done. I'm so excited about this one. I was really like, there was just no way to make it happen with the strike offs. There was not enough background, but I'm very excited now that we have it and we can make this quilt a reality. All right, thank you so much for following along with us as we've taken a look at Nocturne and celebrated the release of my first fabric collection. It is totally a dream come true, and I'm so grateful to be able to work with QT Fabrics to make this happen. And thank you all for loving it and for grabbing it and for continuing to get more of it. So check it out. You can pre-order the kit. You can get yardage now. All of that is over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Thanks so much, and until next time, happy quilting.